Hey guys, this is going to be part 3 on the series lathes and model making, and really just information on using them, information when you go to buy them, what you need to look for, what you should look out for, what you should understand, and things that you need to know before you go out and spend a ton of money on a lathe. Like we said in part 2, you're looking at $500 to $1,200 for a good quality mini metal lathe. Now, I'm reshooting this today. I shot everything else yesterday, and I wasn't happy with really how boring this stuff is. You're either staring at a piece of paper or staring at the lathe. So for this, we're going to look at some things that I've turned, some things that we're going to discuss about your limitations, things to look out for, and things to be careful of, and things that you need to know that you're just not going to be able to do. So with that being said, let's get started. Now, the main thing you see are road wheels. It's a T34 road wheel, Panzer IV, and then of course a King Tiger road wheels. Now, all of these King Tiger road wheels I turned on the lathe. That's how I cleaned up the edges. And the reason this is primed and this isn't is simply because I forgot to clean up the seams before I primed them. I was in a rush, like I normally am, for no reason, and I just primed the tops and got to the sides and realized, hey, you know what, I didn't clean up the seams, so I didn't finish priming them, and I went to the lathe and I cleaned them up. Now this was relatively easy to turn these, and we'll discuss why when we get to the lathe in a moment. But you have the shank, shaft, whatever you want to call it, that you can actually fit into the chuck and turn this, and it helps keep this on the face of the chuck to help really keep this straight and prevent it from being slightly skewed and wobbling when you're turning. And that's the big thing that we're going to look at and talk about in a second. But all those road wheels and all of them for that King Tiger I turned on the lathe. Same with the no, I didn't do the idler, but all the road wheels I did on the lathe. This particular T34, which is to me is old T34-85, because I'm doing a lot of work too, I cleaned this up on the lathe. The difference being I turned these and I turned the outside. This I just had it spin in the lathe and I used a file and sandpaper to clean it up. Alright, now this is a Panzer IV wheel that I haven't touched at all, and we're going to go when we go to the lathe in a second. I'm going to chuck this up and you'll see that how easy it is to get something off or anything like that. But the main thing that you need to be aware of when you're going to turn road wheels, and Paul Budzik in his video about using a lathe, he talks a little bit about this, but you have to make sure that you have it in the chuck properly and square, because if you have it off just a little bit, when it spins, instead of spinning straight and true, it's sort of gonna spin like this, and you're gonna end up with an odd shape if you try to turn it. Now you can get around that with just trying to sand it. You put it in, it doesn't really matter how it's spinning, because you're just holding sandpaper to it and it'll follow the moves up and down. Now if you try and turn it when it's doing that, you're going to end up with something that is not a circle with itself. You'll have the outside will be a perfect circle. The problem is it won't be centered around the middle or whatever the shaft is on, because it was wobbling. If you want to turn them to where they're completely true, you'd have to really turn the inside, drill a new hole, then put it on some sort of shaft or shank, and then turn the outside, and then you know you have perfectly round road wheels. But that's a lot of work and too much of a hassle. Well, like I said, with these King Tiger wheels, it was easy enough just to throw them in. These sat pretty much level against the face of the chuck, or square against the face of the chuck. To when they spun close enough to true that using the bit in the lathe to turn them wasn't a problem. And it's raining pretty heavy right now, guys, so if you can hear that, apologies, but I can't control the weather. And it just stopped, so apparently I can. Like the other problem is it doesn't matter how square you get the one surface to the chuck or in the chuck if you don't have your two road wheel halves aligned properly. If they're not glued parallel and you have one off a little bit, well, you can imagine when this one spins, this one's going to be going back and forth. The same way if you have this one chucked up, this one will be going back and forth. The same problem. Again, if you're just using sandpaper, it's not a big deal. But if you're intending to use a carbide bit to actually turn these things down, that's when you're going to run into the problem. Also, quickly, these are just some things that I was able to turn down. Really just messing around when I first got the machine. Really what you need to do when you first get a machine is just get like a 3-foot, 4-foot section of rod stock and just turn it. Try and do different shapes. Don't try and do any shapes, just turn it. Get to know your machine, get to know your cutters, get to know the material that you're going to be cutting, how it likes to be turned, how fast it likes to go, how much you can do in a pass before it starts giving you problems, how far you can have it out before it starts to bend or chatter, and that is a problem if you're, again, if your bit's not properly lined up with the center of the workpiece, you're going to have chatter and a rough finish. And it's more likely to catch an edge and bend something, this was 1/4 inch aluminum. You can sort of see how far down I was able to go, just really screwing around. But really, when I turned this piece of brass, again, 1/4 inch rod stock, and I was able to get, down to that. I don't have, well, let me get the calipers and we'll measure that. So again, it started off as 1/4 inch, and now it is at 0.57 of a millimeter. 0.58, 0.57, 6 to here at the end, 6. So and this is still even big, from over 6 millimeters to 0.6 of a millimeter. These machines set up properly can really turn down to very small sizes. Now, as a comparison for how small that actually is, I have a set here of Master 1/48 scale gun barrels for F6F 5 Hellcat. And as you can see, the part I turn is actually smaller than the gun shrouds and smaller than some of the other parts of the gun. So you can turn, if you really want to, down to the same size you can get in aftermarket gun barrels. Now, the thing you need to watch out for is how thin of a wall you can turn and how small of a hole you can drill and how precisely you can do that. It doesn't matter how small you can turn something down if you can't drill a hole that's centered. It doesn't matter how well you can get a tape or anything else down if you can't drill a good small hole that is perfectly centered. You can't make a gun barrel because you can't make the muzzle. But as you can see, my particular machine, so all of them can do down to that small. Which should you use 1/4 inch rod stock to go down to that? Of course not. You're wasting way too much material. but just I had to know you could. Things that you need to know that you can't do. Here you have, again, King Tiger turret. The majority of the gun barrel from here to here, you can't really turn. Or, well, the majority, excuse me, you can turn. This is easy, that's just a straight line. There's a little bit of detail there, not much, and then it's a very slight taper towards the muzzle and the brake. And overall, the details or the shape of the brake is easy enough to turn. There is 2 tapers, or really 3 or 4. That can prove difficult if you're not familiar with it. Even this long taper can really be a problem. But the one thing you can't do, I mean, you can't mill out the muzzle on a lathe. Unless, of course, you have a mill lathe combo, which is going to double the cost, and it's going to, you know, if you're only trying to look at one to do muzzle brakes, your money can probably be better spent otherwise. So you'll need a mill to be able to do that as precise as you're able to turn something. Now, as a comparison, this is an R&B Productions aluminum gun barrel with the brass muzzle brake. And I think it was $7 or $8, however much it was. Right? How many of these are you going to have to turn, even though you can't do the muzzle brake? Remember that. So how many of these are you going to have to turn before your lathe pays for itself? Quite a few. I mean, how many road wheels are you going to have to clean up before your lathe pays for itself? Oh, a ton. You know, even if you are really good with machining, you can do a taper, you know, like nobody's business, and you know, you even have it open to where people say, okay, you know what, I need this gun barrel, you turn it for me and I'll pay you $10. Okay, well, how many of those you're gonna have to do before your machine pays for itself, right? And then you gotta, you know, stock, you know, costs. How much is your rod stock going to cost you? How much are your bits going to cost you? Your drill bits, your chucks, other accessories. I will say one thing, as far as muzzle brakes go, there is an adapter you can get for these machines that turns them into a, well, really turns them into a micro lathe. What they do is they have the bit or the end mill or whatever it is you're going to cut with in the headstock of the lathe, and then the tool post becomes the workpiece holder, and you have the adjustments for the normal tool post in and out, forward and backward, and then they add one for up and down, so you can actually mill using the normal controls on the tool post, which I think's pretty cool, and I may end up getting one so I can turn some form of muzzle brakes. But again, if you're thinking that your lathe is going to be able to pay for itself in model making, good luck. I mean, you're going to have to do a lot of it turning to be able to make your lathe even close to pay for itself, and that's something a lot of people don't realize. You're not going to get the money back. You know, it's not like buying something that makes, you know, makes something so easy that you can turn around and do things, that you can get rid of stuff, that you can make your money back. That ain't going to happen with a lathe. Not in model making. Now, of course, like I said, I think in part 2, unless you're going to use this for a lathe for other things besides model making, I wouldn't recommend getting one. You know, I do other, I have a few other hobbies and do other things to where I use the lathe quite a bit for other stuff, not just model making. If I was looking at it just for model making, it's more economical just to buy gun barrels when I need them, to buy antennas or anything else that I need that I would be turning, just to buy it. Because remember, the lathe costs $600. How many gun barrels do you have to buy before it makes it, you know, unreasonable to keep buying aftermarket barrels? That's the problem that a lot of people aren't really thinking about. So unless you're using it for a lot of stuff, I wouldn't bother. But now let's head over to the lathe, and I'll chuck some of the stuff up and show you examples of problems that you're going to run into. I guarantee it. Or you know, simple fixes to those problems and other things. But let's go over to the lathe and take a look. Okay, guys, here we are at the lathe, and we're gonna, again, like I said, chuck some stuff up and turn it. Show you guys examples of the majority of things you're going to run into if you're trying to use a lathe, and you know, model making. In this case, we're looking at 3 different road wheels for armor pieces. And the first thing we're going to look at is, again, well, first thing, sorry about the lighting here. I don't have this lit for filming. I have it lit for working, and trying to get other lights over here just doesn't make sense for, you know, a few minutes worth of a video. But we're going to turn this King Tiger road wheel. Now I'm going to get in a little bit tighter, and one of the things that, let me adjust this some more. One of the things that you need to be aware of, like we mentioned before, is trying to chuck up something square to the chuck and to the tool post, all that. Again, with the King Tiger road wheel, it's easy. Well, first let's get the jaws adjusted a little bit closer where we need them. You put it in, and there you have the road wheel, and it is going to be square because I've already turned it once. So here comes the machine on. Now it's going to be rather loud, so apologies to start. Now I have this very low speed, so hopefully you can still hear me. But hopefully with this camera angle you can still see that adjust this if it'll focus. And you can see that the road wheel is turning mostly square. In fact, I've already turned it once, so that's one of the reasons. But with any road wheel that has a shape like that, it is very easy. So I'll turn off the machine. We'll take this one out. Now let's look at the T34 road wheel. Now I know this angle is not the best, but again, I have this set up for working, not for filming. So open the jaws. Now when you're trying to chuck up something like this to where it's going to be difficult to get it square, there are a few ways that you can just eyeball it to make sure it is as square as you can get it to start. And I already know this isn't going to be perfect, but let's see how it looks when it starts to turn. Again, you can see how it is very slightly out of whack and tilted a little bit. Either this portion glued to that one is tilted, or the whole thing is chucked up tilted. Now you can fiddle with chucking this up with a dial indicator or anything else to make sure it's square, or you can turn a jig to make sure that when you clamp it, it clamps square. But again, that's a lot of work to try and do. And then again, if you're going to do it, you can come along with a file and just go on with the file. And clean it up. And then you come and you finish it with some sandpaper. So again, that's the one way to do it. Now let's actually clean up this Panzer IV wheel, and we are going to turn this so that you guys can even see that even something as small as a road wheel for a Panzer IV or Panzer III, whatever it is, Panzer III, 4, whatever. You can even turn those. Now hopefully you can see that there are still sprue gate stubs left on this that I didn't take off. And I can already tell you that this isn't going to be the smoothest or most round. I'm trying to do my best but do it quickly. I mean, this will give a good example. And you can see how even from that angle you can see how off it is. But even with this, we'll get the tool post up. And I'll adjust the camera in a moment. So again, this will also help answer the question someone had before of how easy it is to set up a cut depth. And I can tell just by looking at it, I'm a little close, so I'll back off and we'll see how that is. You can see we're taking a little bit off. The problem I'm having right now is I am at the end of the adjustment for that, so I'll move the whole carriage. And hopefully you can see how much material is taken off, which is more than I would normally do. But this is just a quick example. This is a spare rodeo, I don't really need it. So there you have a road wheel that has been turned. And hopefully you can see, I can get out of the light. We took out quite a bit of material, but it still looks relatively decent, even though it's not perfectly centered. You're still able to turn it. So let's get the other end chucked up. Trying to get things as centered as I can. Now this time, hopefully you can see, we're still a little bit out around, but not square. But this time I'm going to take even less on this cut, and we'll see how good we can get this to look. Again, you can see. Ideally, you want to sneak up on the cut you're trying to make. And I could tell by the sound it was making. I don't know if you could hear it was going, which means it's not making contact 100% of the time. So we'll go in a little more. Same thing. We'll take a bigger cut. Still the same, take a little bit more. More. You can still tell by the noise that it's not quite enough. Well, again, a few thousandths more. There we go. You can tell by the sound that it was cutting the whole time. So again, you can turn it or you can sand it. You'll end up with the same result, smooth road wheels. Except if you turn them, they'll be, generally speaking, smaller than what you think or what you planned on, and they may have sort of an odd shape in the way they sit, since this surface is round and true, but the part that's going to attach to the vehicle is not. But there you have, I mean, very simple. Doesn't take long to set it up for that, or any road wheel. to where you can do, once you have it set up to a certain cut depth, it's just styrene. You don't really need to do too much in terms of sneaking up and only taking a few thousandths per cut like you would for a harder material. But you can see, I mean, it's not hard to turn a road wheel, and it's pretty quick. So there you have it.